Evolution.org, Underground Supplements, episode 13, Lucky 13. So I'm going to do an updated 2024 N2Guard and HCGenerate, stacking them and why. So this is going to be a very important podcast. Mobster and I, we did the pre-show, and we had a little discussion about, supplement use, steroid use, and how people are willing to spend all this money on certain things in life. Not just steroids, but certain things. I notice people, they spend like $8 every morning on coffee before they go to work. $8 a day. Multiply that
crazy.
by 30, and what is that, like $300? Like every month that they spend on
That's
coffee?
$260, $270, Steve.
Yeah,
That's just crazy. Yeah.
Or they'll spend so much money on a car, or they'll spend so much money on a house that they don't need, a huge yard, and they pay a guy $150, $200 to come mow the yard every month when they can do it themselves. So we waste so much money on stuff that we don't need, vacations, all this other stuff. So Mobster and I were talking about in the pre-show. So Mobster, tell us what we talked about in the pre-show, because you bring up a really good point. I really like.
Yeah, I mean, look, Steve, and I said this online, right? When we've been discussing such things on the forum, I said I can't get my head around sometimes why people will not actually invest in their health, not want to spend 100 or 110 or $120 on two amazing supplements, right? And yet they're perfectly fine. And me and Steve know these kind of cost numbers. I've said it quite a few times. The average purchase on a PED UGL approved source site for steroids and the ancillaries such as an AI and so on and so forth is anywhere between $500 and $1,000. That's the average. And if you said it was $750, I'm not going to argue. I actually know a bunch of people, especially in the American domestic market, $1,000 is atypical. It's a little bit less here. So let's call it $750. And then there's another issue as well, Steve. It's kind of like, and we're going to get into this a little bit at the end of the show as well, where they will buy a supplement to fix a problem, where sometimes the root cause of that problem is lifestyle. And they don't want to change the food that they're eating. They don't want to change the fact that they're drinking or that they enjoy themselves a little bit, so we say, and I'm using a euphemism when I use the word enjoy, at weekends and so on and so forth. So it's kind of crazy and fucked up to me. And let me put it crudely, Steve, right? I live in the valleys of South Wales, and some of my buddies have enjoyed, again that word, recreational drugs multiple times at 50 quid a pop at the weekend. That's $60, $70 a pop at the weekend. And they will be the same kind of client customer base that will say $100, $110 for a supplement that's going to look after my health. God damn, Steve. And you're like, motherfucker, you spent that much on Saturday night. You spent that much on a taxi coming back from the club. So come on, guys, it's a sense of perspective. I have to sometimes shine that particular light on it and say, look, you're spending $750 to $1,000 on a cycle. You'll spend that much on a Saturday night having a great time down at the club. You'll train your ass off, but you won't eat the right food. And then you'll bitch about $100 or $110 or $120. And ultimately, this is an investment in your health. Now, one of the things I said to Steve in a pre-show, and this is how I would roll, when most of us, and again, this is a majority of customers, buy PEDs for a cycle, not everybody, I actually probably one of the rare few that does this, I buy a bit at a time. As and when I've got disposable income that I want to spend, I'll buy this, I'll buy that, and I need this for my next cycle, and I'll stick it away. And when I've got everything together, because there's no rush, Steve, I might have another 20 weeks before I do a cycle again. So I've got 20 weeks to buy bits and bobs. What most people do is they buy it all in one hit. And that's quite a blow to your wallet. It can feel quite a blow to your wallet, and I understand it. So don't get everything all at once. And when it comes to products like we're going to discuss today, buy them when you've got a little bit of disposable income. There's $100 left at the end of the month. Go out and buy it then. Stick it to one side. It doesn't need to be used immediately. It can go with your little stash of your steroids, etc. And when you're ready to run your cycle, off you go. Now, we're actually going to discuss also today the use of both of these products on and off cycle. The focus will be on cycle, of course, so we're going to get into the reasons for why. But again, both products, for example, HCGenerate can be used even as a testosterone booster during a cycle for reasons we'll discuss, but also off cycle as part of your PCT. And again, N2Guard, again, on cycle because you're using PEDs, but also off cycle, again, because perhaps of lifestyle issues and just continuous health benefits. Now, I'll touch on now, and I'll bring Steve in as well. One of the things that we always like to talk about, but we're not going to go too deep on this because we've done it on multiple shows when we've been talking about this company. But the reality of the situation is, I want to talk about Needtobuildmuscle as a company, purely and simply because they produce products that Steve and I trust and use ourselves and recommended to you guys today for use. Why? Why? Because quite simply, the time and energy that they've invested, and I've talked about this in multiple shows, just in the research and the formulation and putting these products together is huge. They have one. I've literally been checking this out in the last couple of weeks. They've just restocked as we do this show some of the other items that they were out of stock of. One of my absolute all-time favorite joint products. They do some other great products as well, and there's the reason, as I say again, is literally time and effort, the background that they've come from. Steve said before that they're not trying to be millionaires. We're not talking about, guys were sort of like uber rich or whatever else. They just wanted to produce the absolute best products they can. Steve, give the listeners a little bit of information on that.
So the guy who came up with N2BM years ago, at least 15 years ago, because I've been using them for close to 15 years. And they were kind of young when I first started using their products. But the guy who came up with the idea, he was actually in the military. He was in the Army, and I think he either was a chef prior to the Army, then joined the Army and and worked as a chef in the Army, as well as his other things. Or when he joined the Army, then he became a chef. But anyway, it doesn't really matter because after he got out of the military, he had the knowledge of how to put things together. He had the education on how to put things together. He had experience using anabolic steroids and how to stack them. He was very brilliant with that. And his time in the military, not just going and fighting in wars overseas and having to put things together, but also his work being trained as a chef in the military, and putting foods together. And he was very, very good at formulating products and putting things together. So, and the thing he decided to do was start N2BM to cater to people like you all that are listening to this podcast, hardcore people, not the old lady. It's like going to physical therapy. I talk about this all the time on the podcast and on the forums. People who go to physical therapy and like, oh, physical therapy didn't do anything for me, didn't help me. And I said, well, look around when you go to physical therapy. Who's in the room with you? Oh, it's a bunch of 80-year-old women. Well, that's the problem. Or 80-year-old men. And physical therapy, you go to a physical therapy place that caters to the wrong demographic, it's not going to help you. You're wasting your time. But you go to a physical therapy place that caters to professional athletes, and you look around and you say, "Oh my God, I recognize that dude. He's a baseball player. I recognize that dude. He plays football. These are the dudes that are coming here." Then that means that these people that work here, these are the cream of the crop physical therapists. They help these athletes come back from devastating injuries. This is the people I want. Well, this is what N2BM is all about when they came up with N2Guard and HCGenerate. They wanted to come up with products that catered to this demographic, Mobster, myself, other people on the forum, and you guys and gals that are listening to this, hardcore users who use anabolic steroids. That's who they wanted to cater to. And it was a brilliant idea because these other supplement companies were only catering to a small number of people or in the industry. They might cater to like professional bodybuilders. They might cater to like an 80-year-old man or woman. They might cater to a 20-year-old kid who's just getting into weight training and wants to get on some creatine or protein powder. That's what they're caring for. But they were ignoring us, steroid users. And professional bodybuilders use these products. We have professionals on our forum that literally use N2Guard and HCGenerate on a daily basis, and they use them together. And that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast, why you should use these products together. And it's an investment. As Monster said, it's an investment in your health. Every time you go out and you drink and you get drunk and you go to the bar, you're not investing in your health. You're doing the opposite. You're hurting your health, and it's going to cost you in the long run. But when you use these supplements, they are an investment in your health, and they will pay off both in the short and long term. And it makes your cycle better. It makes your PCT better. And whether you don't use steroids, it makes your bodybuilding and your gym grind better in the process. And it helps your organs, and it does so many different things. So that's what we're going to do on this podcast, and we're going to talk about it. And that's basically, I'll tell you, before I knew about N2BM products, I was a hardcore athlete. Um, I was I competed in powerlifting. I can compete in endurance sports. I love competing. I love just the. It's almost like when you were, in school, and you had a test coming up, and you studied your balls off for the test, and you get the test done, you ace the test. I used to love that. And then when I started competing, I love training ahead of competitions, and then doing the competition and acing the competition, and be like, damn. And I love the feeling too when I would do, and I'd be like, you know what? I should have done this better, or did that better. And next time I'm going to correct that. That's what we're all about. That's what I'm about. That's what Mobster is about. That's what these products are about. These products are about giving you the proper supplements that will make your entire grind excel. It will help you across the board with all your organs. It will help you feel better, have more energy. I'll give you an example right off the bat, Mobster. Liver. When you have a strained liver, you're going to feel like shit. You're not going to have energy. You know what I'm saying? How's that going to affect your gym grind? When you go to the gym, you're not going to feel good when you're training. And what's the point of using anabolic steroids if you're going to feel like shit? So get into that topic, Mobster. Effects on and off cycle. Let's start with a little bit about on cycle.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, Steve's our great blood expert, but you can quite easily see, and again, you can go onto the forums and check out examples of people's blood tests where their natural testosterone post cycle are off all over the place, where the cholesterol numbers are up and down, where the red blood cell count is way off, where the creatinine, that's the byproduct, both for training and or creatine use, is way off. And just as an example, we know that if we forget to stop taking creatine before we have a normal blood test off cycle, it can throw off one of the numbers that gives doctors a kind of like a red flag, right? So here's an example. I'll touch upon what Steve was talking about as well. I literally came across a list the other day, Steve. I screenshotted it. It's all the British championships, including the 4 that I won. And I didn't realize, just because I'd forgotten, that I won 3 in a row. And I believe at that time, and this is talking about stress on the body, Steve, I was using PEDs. I was competing. I was at that time the only athlete in my niche sport that was competing so much in multiple countries: Germany, Spain, Sweden multiple times, America multiple times. There was no other athlete traveling around the world like I was to compete. And then I've touched on this in other shows where I said that part of my process to get ready for this kind of competition and to win these big competitions, especially the British 4 times and the European tries, to compete at the Arnold and the Mighty Miss, etc. So it was to ensure that I was training harder than anybody else. I literally hated the idea that if I was absolutely destroying my body, and that's what we're getting at, no one was training as hard as me. And if someone was, god damn, they deserved the title over me. So you're using the hardest possible training you could possibly do. If you're bodybuilding, as most of our listeners are, you're sometimes restricting your nutrition to minimal sources of nutritional goodness. For example, rice and chicken. Where's your vegetables? Where's your fruits? Where's your nuts? So you're nutritionally going without. You're stressing your body to the hardest possible level, as I was, and you're using performance-enhancing drugs. So your numbers, your liver values, your kidney values, your blood values, the estrogen, testosterone ratio, that's all going to be all over the place. The heart is affected. Steve has touched upon this in depth before, and quite simply, we almost come to expect it, Steve. We kind of understand that if I'm going to stress the fuck out my body to try and be a world-class, in my case, lifter, if I'm drying my body down like no one else has there has on earth, like a world-class bodybuilder, if I want to stand on stage at the Olympia looking like a vascular roadmap with striations on top of striations on top of striations, I understand completely that this is not a healthy place to be. And if you had your blood values done then, just before you went on stage, and was able to maintain a stress-free environment, the doctor, the endocrinologist, the person doing the blood test would probably freak the fuck out. We have literally seen, Steve and I, we've talked about this on other shows, the steroid stacks of bodybuilders, professional bodybuilders that have died, and we've specifically seen the autopsy blood test results. Now, obviously, we've also seen multiple blood tests on the forum, and as often as not, it is a question of the training, over the nutritional or lack of nutrition, stress, things that they do at the weekend, like I've already said, and sometimes literally that they're not using these products. And another thing, and Steve's touched on this as well, when he says, I have seen pre, during, and post cycle bloods, and I've also seen bloods, and I'll let Steve touch on this as well, where the person has gone on N2Guard. In fact, last week, we had a post on one of the forums where the person said, I had left my bloods done, and I've just recently started using N2Guard, and you could see the fucking difference in the results. Talk about the specific, the actual things that stand out, Steve.
Yeah, and I can tell you from personal experience what stands out is very simple. I've been on cycle and I use my N2Guard and I run out of I run out of my bottle. And then I can feel the changes that happen. I mean, I can go through the list. I mean, my sleep got worse, energy went down, stress levels went up. You know, I could feel the effects when I go work out. My heart rate would go up a lot easier with less intensity. And you know, I got my blood pressure machine. You know, I check my blood pressure spikes 10, 15, 20 points, heart rate spikes, resting heart rate spikes, you know, so all this stuff. And then you can get blood work, as Mobster said. You could see it even without the blood work, but even get blood work, you'll see your cholesterol levels go haywire, you know. So, and then I'll get another bottle of N2Guard, I'll order it, and I'll get it, and I'll get back on N2Guard. And a few days later, everything goes back to where it was before. Like, I feel so much better, I'm sleeping better, and all this stuff. So it's not an accident. All these ingredients, they do things. And it's not that N2Guard, I just want to be clear, it's not that N2Guard contains a stimulant in it that helps you with more energy and stuff. That's not what it's all about. It's that it's helping your organs. And it's not like N2Guard has ingredients to help you sleep at night. No, it doesn't have ingredients that you take and it's like, oh, it knocks me out and I sleep. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting a good night's sleep on cycle when it's harder to sleep on cycle because your heart rate is elevated. And a lot of people, I've seen this on logs on the forum, a lot of people that wake up in the middle of the night and they're like, look, I can't go back to sleep. I don't know what's wrong. Well, I can tell you what's wrong. Your heart rate's elevated. Your heart health is poor. And what happens is you get up at night and you can't go back to sleep. You're not going to be able to go back to sleep because your heart rate is too elevated. And you can't fall asleep if your heart rate is elevated. You see, this is why people who, you know, who are in certain situations where they're uncomfortable at night, whether it be, you know, the temperature is off or something, they have a hard time sleeping. It could be too hot, it could be too cold because your heart rate is adjusting to that temperature where your body's not comfortable. So of course you're not gonna be able to sleep. So N2Guard helps you with little things like that that you wouldn't expect from a product, but it doesn't contain specific ingredients to help us sleep, but it helps overall. Your organs feel better, your heart feels better, so that now you're able to sleep. So that's the beauty part of N2Guard. It doesn't contain any garbage, stimulants, you know, sleep aids, any of the stuff. Doesn't contain an upper, doesn't contain a downer, but it keeps you level during the day. Same thing with HCGenerate. Doesn't have any of that stuff. HCGenerate is a great herbal formula, and we're going to go over some of the ingredients in the next segment. But it's very important to keep in mind with HCGenerate. On cycle, it's going to help with a lot of things. It's going to help with your libido. It's going to help with balancing your cholesterol as well. A lot of people don't know that. They're like, oh, it's a testosterone booster. Okay, it is. It is mostly a testosterone booster, but a lot of these herbals also have benefits to the brain, to the heart, to other things that you wouldn't expect. And that's not by accident. They put those in there on purpose. So AC Generate isn't just a great product for post cycle, it's also great for on cycle. Now, in terms of post cycle, what are the effects? Now, we all know when you come off cycle, it's a very stressful time for your body. A lot of people, Mobster, I've seen them in the gym, you know, and they come in on cycle and they are pumped, they are huge, they are strong, and then off cycle, they shrink up and they get weak so fast. So that's not what we want. So AC Generate is very important because it helps your post cycle therapy. It helps your PCT. It helps your body recover more smoothly. It helps your libido during PCT when you tend to crash. It helps get you motivated to go to the gym. All right. So it helps support your reproductive system, your pituitary glands, and your Leydig cells. And that's not what Clomid and Nolvadex do. Clomid and Nolvadex are great drugs to use in post-psychotherapy. They're SERMs, but they only help your pituitary glands by blocking estrogen from feedbacking. They do not directly help your Leydig cells. AC Generate does. It does both. It helps both your pituitary glands and it helps your Leydig cells, which are your balls, your testes. So it's very important to be using AC Generate in PCT in conjunction with your SERMs, not just using your SERMs. A lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people say, I'm using Clomid and Nolvadex. I don't need to use a AC Generate. I don't need to use a testosterone booster. No, you need to, because Clomid and Nolvadex come with side effects. So what happens is a lot of people, Mobster, they come and complain. They're like, oh, I feel like shit in PCT. I'm
Yeah.
depressed. I'm moody. I feel like a bitch. I don't have the motivation to work out. And then I'll say, like, are you using AC Generate in your PCT? They're like, no, I'm just using Clomid and Nolvadex. I'm like, well, that's the problem. If you just use Clomid and Nolvadex, you're going to get a lot of good things from those drugs. And I support using those drugs. I use those drugs in PCT, but you're also going to get the bad. And they do come with side effects. So if you're not running AC Generate with them, you're going to have those negative side effects, which can cause a lot of problems in your PCT. And that's not what you want. You want PCT to be smooth. You want to feel good in PCT. So AC Generate is very important for that reason. And then let me just touch on N2Guard really quick in PCT before I bring you in, Mobster, and you give kind of your analysis of
Yeah.
that. So N2Guard, again, during PCT, there are products in N2Guard that will help you recover. There are products in N2Guard that will help guide you during your post-psychotherapy. It's got tons of vitamins and minerals. It's going to help balance your hormones, including estrogen and testosterone. It's going to help your cells. It's going to help your digestion. It's going to help your energy. It's going to help your vitality. There's a lot of good things it does during your PCT. One of the prime things that needs to be done in PCT. PCT is just not about, okay, I want to recover my nuts. I want to recover and feel good and have libido and all this stuff. That's not what PCT is all about. That's a part of PCT. That's a very important part of PCT. But it's not all what PCT is all about. And that's a misconception people have. One of the important parts of PCT and why you should still do a PCT, even if you're doing TRT, or even if you're cruising, or even if you're staying on nonstop or year round, is to support your organs. And that
Yeah.
is a prime important thing in PCT because your liver just got its ass kicked. Your kidneys just got its ass kicked. Your heart just got its ass kicked. Your brain just got its ass kicked. And N2Guard helps with your kidneys. It helps with your liver. It helps with your brain. And another little thing it helps with, this is important, with all these super bugs now that we're dealing with, and we're going to have to deal with more super bugs in the future with the amount of humans that are on this planet, it's the immune system. And how many times, Mobster, do we see guys on the forum? They'll run a cycle, they'll have an amazing gains, they'll go into PCT, and then they'll get sick. You think that's an accident? It's not an accident. During PCT, your body is stressed out. All
Yeah.
right. So when your body is stressed out, your immune system is weaker. So it's going to be easier for you to catch something. So N2Guard also helps your immune system. It's a very important time for your immune system. How many times we see people on cycle not get sick, even though people around them are sick, then they get to PCT and then they get sick? That's not an accident. Your immune system got weaker when you came off the anabolic steroids because you had that crash of hormones. That's what happens. Low hormones in your body make your body weaker. So it's very important in PCT to be running your HCGenerate and your N2Guard in PCT for that reason. So you keep your immune system strong. If you end up sick in PCT and you have to miss 1 or 2 weeks, what do you think is going to happen to your gains? Right? How fast will you lose your strength? How fast will you lose your gains that you just busted your ass for on cycle if you get sick in PCT? That's the worst time to get sick. So N2Guard does so much that people don't even realize it does. Go ahead, Monster. Touch on that, and we'll start. Let's get into the top ingredients in both products.
I was going to say, Steve, you've got to also include stuff like boosting your digestion, which is going to help in both those examples. Again, because quite often we restrict our diet, we're manipulating the macros. We're trying. There's sometimes an element of trial and error. One of the things you and I see commonly on the forums is, especially from the younger guys who quote unquote don't like veggies, and we're like, listen, you need that. We see people that don't have enough fiber in the diet and so on and so forth. And again, the analogy here would be if you put in pure fuel, don't expect your car to go 100 miles an hour. You need to put in the best fuel. And then again, I also use this analogy, Steve, where I say, you know, if you want the best results from your cycle, then you invest in getting the best results, and that is the proper food. It's the proper good steroids. It's products like HCGenerate and N2Guard, because ultimately you might have left 10 or 15% on the table. Let me touch upon, and I'm going to let Steve talk about the ingredients specifically, but one of the things we've discussed, Steve, is how some of these ingredients came to be. So a little bit of a very brief history lesson. Go back a couple of 100 years. Sometimes people had read about stuff even before that time, where various countries, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the English, etc., we were out there exploring the whole fucking planet. We were discovering countries we never heard of. We found ways to different countries that we didn't know existed and so on. And during that time, they came across certain islands and certain parts of places that they'd never been to before, in Sumatra, in Java, and whatever else, Steve. And they came up on these beaches and they met the locals, and there would be conversations about things like, why do all the locals not have any infections? Why are their teeth amazing? As an example, the English hadn't got their head around the vitamin C, so we're suffering from scurvy. We're out on the ship for months, and we come to this tropical island, and they introduced us to the lemon. We went to South America, we found the potato. So some of the herbs and some of the ingredients that are included in these products, ironically, are actually from old civilizations that were discovered a couple of 100 years ago. And it would part of we took scientists on some of these explorations, and the scientists started to look at what are the natives eating? What is it that's giving them vitality? What's giving them great skin? What's giving them good hair? Why do they have no problems with their teeth? Why are their eyes so bright? They're literally in the middle of nowhere. They have none of the technology. They have none of the science that we have, and yet their health is amazing. They are, to put it crudely, Steve, shagging like rabbits. And so they started to realize that certain plants that were only found in those places had these health benefits. And of course, scientifically speaking, and 200 years later, what do? We realize what part of the plant it does the job. We realize how to standardize the part of that plant so that we can make it even more effective than the native version, and so on and so forth. And it would be things like, Steve, the various testosterone boosters that are in HCGenerate. Some of those come from these kind of explorations and these civilizations. I've touched upon in N2Guard, Tribulus, coming from a Bulgarian specific test, and they only had to have the good part of the plant. It could only be standardized. It couldn't be less than a certain potent portion of the leaf, and so on and so forth. So there's some of these things are from the Amazonian jungle. Some of them are from tropical islands. Some of them are even in Europe. It's just that we've forgotten about some of these ingredients and then reintroduced them. I mean, silly little things, Steve, and we've touched upon this. I believe in N2Guard when we talk about TUDCA, and we say the TUDCA and taurine. TUDCA as specifically as a liver health benefit booster, and taurine for those of you that get murder pumps, and I've had these specifically with Anavar, where taurine is included in these products so that you don't get those crazy, painful, deliberating pumps. You want a pump, but you don't want one that stops you working. You want to be able to process the food and process the steroids and get as much out of the steroid as possible. So you need a healthy set of kidneys, you need a healthy liver, and so on and so forth. So this is how these ingredients were discovered. Now we're going to get into the specifics, the top 5 ingredients of both products. Let's start with N2Guard here, Steve, as the top 5 ingredients. I'll let you go.
Yeah, and so one of the ingredients in N2Guard, which is extremely important and extremely popular, is of course TUDCA. And look, at the end of the day, a lot of people are using TUDCA these days, and they're using it standalone. And look, TUDCA, it's a great supplement, and using it standalone, is a really, really good option. I have a lot of respect for it. But if you want to get the most out of TUDCA, it needs to be stacked with other things. So, and indeed, in this example, N2Guard has 250 milligrams of TUDCA per serving. And TUDCA is great. Kidneys, heart, liver, and the brain, all of it. It's very, very good. And they've been using TUDCA for a long time, for decades and decades and decades. They actually used to extract it, which is horrible. They used to extract it from bears. I think they still do, by the way. They actually raise bears and extract it from bears. So horrible, absolutely horrible. And that should not be happening. But the TUDCA that N2Guard uses is not. It's made, as a supplement. It doesn't come, no animal was harmed producing it. So that's a good thing. But TUDCA really needs to be stacked. For it to work, it's very best. It should be stacked with other organ support supplements. And that's what N2Guard has. They have 6 or 7 great liver supplements, 6 or 7 great kidney supplements, 5 or 6 great brain supplements, all in the formula. So that mixes it really good. Another other ingredients I really like in that N2Guard has, and those of you are going to love this, those of you who take a multivitamin, is it has so many vitamins and minerals in here. So I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different vitamins and minerals. From vitamin B12, from vitamin C, from vitamin D, all the way to things like calcium and zinc and selenium and magnesium. These are all things, these are important to have in our body. And these are really good to have. A lot of these ingredients are necessary to have your body function the way it's supposed to function. And look, at the end of the day, a lot of us, don't get the proper nutrition that we need because we're not eating enough real foods. We're not eating enough whole foods. So without that, you're going to have problems. And look, at the end of the day, sometimes, when it comes to these things in bodybuilding, we need more. We need more. And this is where N2Guard helps out. I have a lot of respect for whoever put this formula together because they included these essential vitamins and minerals that we need just to function normally. I'll mention another one, Mobster, this is really important, is coenzyme Q10. And really, if you go to any nutritionist, dietitian, cardiologist, or anybody else who deals with heart health and health in general, and you ask them, what's the best heart supplement you can recommend for me? And that would be, they call it, CQ10. A lot of them call it CQ10, coenzyme Q10. And N2Guard has this product, this supplement in its formula for a reason. It's because it is such a damn good heart supplement. Another one that's a really good heart supplement that a lot of people don't talk about is polycosanol. And this one is very, very important for blood circulation and balancing your lipids. So this is one of the ingredients that's in here where you take N2Guard or you run out of N2Guard and you start taking it again. You notice, oh, my cholesterol levels, moved. Why, this stuff really works. Wow, my cholesterol levels improved 10, 15 points on N2Guard. How is that possible? Well, this is one of the reasons. But again, with both the poly and the coenzyme, both of them, using them by themselves is okay, is good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's very important when you are a steroid user. Again, we're not talking about 80-year-old grandma here. 80-year-old grandma could take coenzyme Q10 and get good results, right? But you as a steroid user, you have to stack. So just using them by themselves, I'll be straight up honest with you. Just using them by itself ain't gonna do shit for you. I'll be honest. So you must stack them. This is why N2Guard, 44 ingredients that are in N2Guard, 44 Mobster, that all work in synergy. And I'll give you one more, Mobster, before you bring you in. Black pepper fruit extract, piperine. Now, why is this one important? Why is this one important? Not just because it does a lot of good things, like helps burn fat and helps your digestion and stuff like that, but it helps you absorb all these ingredients. How many times do we see people take a multivitamin and they go pee and their pee changes colors? What's going on there? You're pissing out what you're drinking, what you're taking with the vitamins. And it doesn't make any sense. You're not absorbing it. So this is a very important ingredient in this. Now I go back to what I said at the beginning of the show about the army chef that founded N2BM. This is in there because he knew, as a chef, it's just like a chef knows you add this extra little bit of pepper or extra little bit of salt, and that will make the dish actually taste 100% better. Or you add a little bit of paprika, or you add a little bit of garlic or whatever, right? Same thing with this. He knew to put this product in here. Other supplements similar to this or any multivitamins, they don't do shit for you at all because you're unable to absorb what you're putting in your body. N2Guard has you covered. They're smart when they put this formula together. They knew what they were doing. Mobster?
How powerful is that, Steve? Where and this is crazy, guys, and some of you will know this, but some of you will not. There's similar ingredient in grapefruit, and both of these items, I said specifically the black pepper fruit in the form of piperine, boost the uptake not just of the rest of the ingredients in N2Guard, but also, ironically, certain medications you can't take or be using or eating or consuming grapefruit, again, because it boosts the uptake, and they actually want you not to get too much of the medication. There's a certain proportion that you're going to absorb in your body, which is called the effective dose, and then there's the rest of it, which is wasted. But they know this when they get, like, for example, glucosamine, Steve. You need to have a certain amount taken in, and then only a portions, 80 or 90% of it, is utilized for the effect of your joint health. Now, if you were taking 100%, you might actually end up with issues that you don't want. And so certain prescribed medications specifically advise you not to be using this active ingredient because you might actually be absorbing too much of it and be slightly over the dose that's been recommended for you. One that stood out for me, Steve, was milk thistle extracts. And as I mentioned earlier on when I was talking about tribulus, basically a massive booster to your, tribulus is obviously a way of boosting your testosterone. Milk thistle is a great way it's one of the number ones, in fact, the number one ingredients for liver health. And something else, Steve, yerba mate is probably the ingredient that is recommended for heart health, for example. So those are just things there. Something that Steve touched upon at the beginning, and I've touched upon this in other shows when he used the word just now, I believe, synergy. And that's this idea that with certain ingredients in isolation, like Steve said, you take them and there's actually a couple of people on our forums doing this right now, Steve, and we've talked about this when we said the in Pope and Iron, filmed in 1975. Lou Ferrigno is standing in his parents' house in the fireplace, and there's a great long load of bottles on the fireplace, the mantelpiece, 20, 30 bottles. And a couple of our forum members are doing this right now, and I'm like, why have you got 20 supplements? You're literally taking 20 supplements every morning. Ironically, Steve, that would actually cost you probably more than buying N2Guard does. And then there's a synergy effect that Steve talks about, whether it's for products for the pump, products for liver health, products for heart health, products for brain health, products for digestion, and so on and so forth. And that is and this goes back to the chef analogy that Steve used at the beginning, this idea that Everything in isolation has a certain particular effect, but when you combine them, you have to be careful that one doesn't overcome the other one. It doesn't negate one ingredient, so why was you taking it, and so on and so forth. And you go to companies, huge companies, there's about 5 or 6 in America that they produce a lot of supplements for some of the biggest brands you've heard of. Not everybody manufactures in-house. Some do, but the majority do not. And you sit down with one of these formulation scientists. I've actually worked with people like this at a meat factory back in the day when we were trying to put sausage recipes together for big supermarket brands. And you need to get the ratios for cost, in the case of the sausage, for taste, to not have a herb added to it that overpowered the ingredient and so on. When you're talking about a product like N2Guard, you want all those ingredients to benefit you in some way. What you don't want is one overpowering another one and negating. You don't want to use one ingredient that has exactly the same effect as another ingredient. And this is another thing as well, you use these formulation companies sometimes just for their buying power, to go away and buy hundreds of kilograms of one ingredient that you can't do as a small supplement company, but they can because they buy by the ton, whereas you'd be buying by the barrel. So you want them to be able to get that. You also want them to get the best version of that ingredient. And again, you might be new to the market. They are not. And then finally, they will sit down, sometimes with computer programs and sometimes simply the old-fashioned way of preparing a product with a very small amount, mortar and pestle, Steve, and they're trying to get these ingredients to work together synergistically to produce the overall effect. We know the effects that we're having on our body when we stress them on cycle. We know the effects we're having on our body sometimes when we train too hard, like Steve said, an elevated heart rate in the morning, stressing, tired, digestion's all over the place. We know sometimes that how when we restrict our diet as a bodybuilder, literally in the last few weeks of a show, it can't be healthy. So here we are looking to produce a product that is literally going to work on all those negative things that we're doing to ourselves to produce a positive result. And it needs to be very carefully formulated. I know that not just the companies with the formulation experts, but he also spoke to experts in supplements, recognized names in the bodybuilding and supplement industry, where these people were hired as experts by outside supplement companies to come sit down and talk about what's the best testosterone booster, what's the best liver ingredient, what's the best for your brain, and so on and so forth. And again, then you go to the formulation company and say, listen, I want to put all these things together, but I need it to be on point. And that is really, really difficult. It involves multiple batches. It involves thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, probably more, Steve, literally going back and forth, traveling there, getting these products tested, stuff like when the product's produced. I know of companies that have produced absolutely amazing products for a big name brand, and then very, very quickly, the formulation is quietly changed from the really expensive ingredients to much cheaper, lower grade ingredients. And then the supplement company's been caught out when a product's been tested. And sometimes it's not even them that's fucked up. Except the company that produced it realized they wasn't making much of a profit, and they decided to change the formulation on the quiet to produce a cheaper version and increase their profit margin, and they didn't tell the supplement companies. So this is some of the stuff that goes on. Now, we know just from our own personal use, and we know from the feedback that we've seen, that these products work. We've seen, like I said earlier on, examples on the forums. You can check this for yourself, where people have taken the products, specifically N2Guard in this example, and seen the blood values improve to where they're supposed to be. Now, there's a way of doing reading these blood tests. I know how to do it. Steve's the actual expert on it, but it's stuff like, in brackets, the values that are typical, and then you'll see to the left the value of the person that's been tested, and you'll realize that their numbers are way up or way down or nowhere near average, and so on and so forth. And then afterwards, they've got on N2Guard, and their values have come in line with the healthy, normal example that is typically given in that bracket section. So it's just a way of reading the blood test and seeing how they work. So, yeah, I mean, look, let me try something else as well, Steve. I mean, we're going to talk about HCGenerate in a little minute for the same reason, and talk about the top 5, top 6 ingredients, our personal choices. I'll touch upon something that Steve's already touched upon, and that is the idea of using these products on and off cycle. So, for example, and there are ingredients in HCGenerate that help with this. I've actually argued against this in the past, but I've changed my mind. And the idea was, why would I want to use a test booster, a normal test booster, when I'm using something that suppresses my natural testosterone levels, i.e., steroids. Quite simply, if I take steroids, there's no reason for my body to produce testosterone. So why then would I want to use HCGenerate? Well, I couldn't get my head around it. And then obviously I've looked at what's in HCGenerate and I said, okay, Steve persuaded me, the ingredients persuade me. One very, very simple one, and it's super, super important to a lot of you. I've never really got this, Steve, probably because I've never really suffered with it. But your ball size, your testicle size. Okay, so not only are you getting certain health benefits from using HCGenerate on cycle, even though that's its number one purpose is a testosterone booster, but for example, natural ingredients that boost your bollock size, your ball size, your testicle size. That stuff in the nuts, somewhere between the top of your thighs and the penis, quite simply, guys. And I know that this is crazy important to some of you. Literally, if you're not telling your girlfriend, your significant other, you're using steroids, and she said, and she's giving you, let's put it crudely, Steve, a blowjob, and she's cupping your balls and says, "What the fuck's going on here? Are you okay?" Making sure you haven't got testicle cancer or something. Very considerate of her or him. What the hell's going on here? And literally they say something, and this affects some people more than others, where they have balls the size of chicken's eggs and they go down to raisins. A slight exaggeration, but I've seen it described thus multiple times. And this is, your body does this on cycle. Now, if you do a proper PCT, your ball size should come back. You're not blasting, cruising and staying on all the time. Your ball size, given sufficient time, should come back. Now, the use of HCGenerate on cycle will help with your ball size, will help with your ball health. Let's get specifically, Steve, into our favorite top 5 ingredients with HCGenerate. I'll let you start again.
So one of the underrated ingredients, I'll let Mobster touch on the big ones that we all know on, but one of the underrated ingredients is 3,4-divinol. And I don't think people really understand what 3,4-divinol does and why it's so important to be used not just on cycle, but also during post cycle. And look, the bottom line is this is one of the few natural supplements that exist that will actually help break down barriers when it comes to building strength and building muscle. And it does this by binding the sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG. So it's going to, on cycle, make the steroids that you're using work better. You'll be able to use less steroids and have more effect. And then during PCT, it's gonna help free up testosterone. You got unbound, you got bound testosterone, you got free testosterone, total testosterone. The free testosterone is what counts, not the total testosterone. So if you've got lower total testosterone in PCT because you just came off hormones and your body's trying to recover, and your body's trying to get back to where it was before, right? It's very important to have as much free testosterone during this period as possible. Because even if you got lower testosterone, if your free testosterone is higher, you'll be all right, as they say. You'll be all right. Get through it. So this is what 3,4-divinol does. Very, very important. Another ingredient that's very important here that a lot of people don't know about is zinc. And one of the reasons why we have low testosterone levels, okay, in America, there's several different reasons, environmental factors and all this, but one of the big ones is poor amounts of minerals, because we're eating so much processed food, we're eating restaurant food, we're eating fast food, we're not getting a proper vitamins and minerals that we need. And one of the proper minerals that we need is zinc. And zinc is extremely important. In fact, based on, studies that we've seen, Mobster, if you don't have an adequate amount of zinc that you're consuming, and you don't have an adequate amount of zinc, you're not going to be able to produce testosterone, period.
Yeah.
All right. So that's why zinc is such an important mineral. And this is why it's an important one. And then one more, vitamin E. One of the studies that was found that actually helps male fertility was one that combined Clomid and vitamin E together. That's the only study, and it was done in Egypt. It's the only study out there. So anybody who tries to bullshit you and lie to you and say, oh my God, take this for fertility, take this for fertility. Listen, at the end of the day, we have one study from, if someone had come up with male fertility, they would be a billionaire. Okay. It doesn't exist. But the one study out there that actually showed male fertility that got better in a clinical study in a controlled environment done properly. Okay. Not just my friend took this and he got
Yeah.
his girlfriend pregnant. That's not a study. Okay. I'm talking about an actual study. Was vitamin E and Clomid together. So Clomid, great in PCT. We already said, you know, go for it in PCT. But if you add the HCGenerate, you're getting all these ingredients that are in HCGenerate, and then you're getting another one of these ingredients. You're getting the zinc, as I just talked about. You're getting the 3,4-divinol. You're also getting the vitamin E, which is going to be extremely important because without the vitamin E, you can't get your Leydig cells back to where they should be. You can't get them firing off, right? So vitamin E not only does that, but it's great as an antioxidant and it's great for your workouts in general. So these are very, very important things. And we don't get enough vitamin E with our westernized American diet full of fast food and restaurant food. Mobster?
Yeah, I'm going to touch upon 4 ingredients, and then I'm going to talk about mineral depletion, Steve, when you touched upon minerals just now. That's actually FDA tested specifically for this information. Right, Tonga alley root, very well known as a test booster. Boron citrate. Boron is a test booster, kind of mild on its own, but when, again, working in conjunction with the other ingredients, boost testosterone. Again, it has to be in the right form. Fenugreek, absolutely. This is, again, some of these ingredients are found in lots of testosterone boosters, but as often as not, Steve, you need to look at the formulation and see if the numbers are where they need to be, as in what was shown in a study to work, how much and where from on the plant, and then how much is in that product that you've looked at on the shelf from GNC. And the last one I'm going to mention, Steve, is Phytosia agrestis. I hope I'm saying that properly. Every single one of those specifically helps both with your sex drive, your sperm production, or your testosterone production. So those 4, plus the ones that Steve's already mentioned. And then, of course, there's a bunch of other ingredients, which, again, in combination, work to boost your natural testosterone levels, your ball size, to help you recover after a cycle to get back to normal sperm production, normal testosterone levels, with your testicular health, and so on and so forth. Now, on the mineral depletion, let me touch upon this quickly, Steve, and then I'm going to give you a couple of lifestyle tips and techniques. Right. So the FDA, and I seem to recall this was an article that went around the world, but for whatever reason, perhaps the nutritional companies that produce most of our food in supermarkets didn't really want it mentioned too much. And it was thus, and maybe the governments as well, Steve, they literally had samples of tests that they'd done in the 50s, and the quality of the minerals, the amounts, the quality, the purity, whether they were good, whether they were not good in your diet. So, for example, and I'm just using this as an example, the potato from the 1950s versus the potato that's produced now. And this applied right away across the spectrum. It wasn't just a fucking potato. It was a majority of food that was grown in the 50s was, to quote your mum and dad and your granny and your aunt Fanny and whatever else, better for you, because we are over processing food, because we are speed growing food, because we are throwing chemicals at these foods to make them grow quickly. So it's a bigger, healthier looking, but not healthier for you potato. And again, I'm just using potato as an example. The FDA said that the products or the ingredients, the plants that were grown then, that the fruit and vegetables that were grown in had better nutrition, better minerals for you in the 1950s versus the 2024s as we record this show. And that is a scientific fact. You can literally go online, search for this information, and see if you can find the mineral breakdown of plants then versus plants now. And the quality is not as good as it used to be. So you're kind of eating poorer food with less nutritional value to you as an individual. Now, on that subject, and this is a bit of a fix, it's at the end. Now, listen, 100%, and I'm going to say this at the final part of the show, why we recommend N2Guard, why we recommend HCGenerate. But guys, you have to do some of the work. I'm not asking you to stick a plaster on a gunshot wound. You need to fix certain things. If you're caning it, as we say in the United Kingdom, at the weekends with booze and drugs, recreationals, smoking, weed, never mind smoking tobacco, whatever else, if you stay up late and get up early, if you're drinking tons of coffee, if you're allowing the whole of the fucking stuff that annoys us and stresses us to stress you, to, as we say again here in the United Kingdom, to do your nothing, you are doing this to yourself. If your diet was better, if you went to bed and made sure you got to sleep, if you closed the goddamn curtains and didn't have the TV on or the radio on all night, if you didn't drink so much coffee late in the day, if you paid attention to your health, you can't, for example, Steve, and again, I said it earlier in the show, have a fast food diet, tell me that you don't like vegetables, and then complain that you're getting spotty skin or your health is not as good as it should be. Another example I see sometimes, people say it's a genetic thing, meaning that the family are fat. That's the reason why I'm fat. No, you wasn't born fat. Your family's fat because they had crappy habits, and you carried on those crappy habits, not realizing that they're crappy habits. So sometimes you've got to break that cycle. And you'd be surprised at the number of people who just start adding roughage, fiber, and trying to get their daily quota of vegetables into their diet, eating more colorful vegetables, greens and yellows and oranges and reds and whatever else and stuff like that. I can be as lazy as the next motherfucker. I get it. But equally, I understand it. If I want optimal performance, if I want to break records, even at my old ass age now, if I want the best results from my bodybuilding cycle, if I was a bodybuilder like most of our listeners, if I'm trying to get into shape and I want to look fucking amazing and blow people's minds on the beach, on the catwalk, for photographs, for the wedding, for the bodybuilding stage, then I need to invest in better food, better nutrition, and better habits. It's literally sometimes the simple stuff like getting more sleep. If you're training your ass off, you're going to be tired. Some people do this thing. Why am I so tired on cycle? Well, you're not using N2Guard, which is helping. You're not getting your daily quota of sleep, and you're training your fucking asses off. It's going to fuck you up, guys. You are going to places physically that you never went to before. And you need to have, and I'm going to touch on this now, Steve, as we finish, you need to ensure, think of this as an investment in health. Don't be spending $750 or $1,000, like I said at the beginning of the show, and then bitching about spending $110, $120 on investing in your health. Steve's talked about on other shows how people will not moan about getting their car detailed and then not spend money on supplements to look after the number one thing in their life, which is their own fucking bodies. Guys, again, we talk about PEDs, we talk about steroids. We're not saying never to take them, but we try to get you to take them when you're the right age, when you know what you're doing with proper research. And then we understand completely that sometimes, especially when we get into the higher dosages, you will stress your body. You will stress your body by training. When I'm doing 700-pound squats, I'm stressing my body. When I'm doing 400-pound benches, I'm stressing my body. If I'm a pro bodybuilder, we got on the forums, and I'm doing 25 sets per muscle group, I'm stressing my body. And when I'm doing it on a restricted diet, so why not invest in something that looks after you? Look at Needtobuildmuscle, specifically look at N2Guard for on and off cycle benefits. Look at HCGenerate for on and off cycle benefits, and make sure you're investing in your health. Please note, we are not doctors, and the opinions are ours, is our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. Our podcast are for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.